And then all of you turn on your videos. Everybody turn on your video. Deepak Yadav, Ashwini Tiwari, Swapnali, Pragati Sharma. Do I have to take everybody's name out right now? Turn on your videos. Harshini, Shilpi Singh, Pooja Pawar. Vartika Singh, Bhargavi.
Ma'am, I have already turned my videos. Ma'am, I have already turned on my videos.
Okay, fine, wait. Gaurav, Garima Singh. Okay, so I'm gonna start the class. So today's topic for your this thing. 1 second. Share. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So today I'll be covering two topics for you, which are quite interlinked with each other. That's why both the topics are together, taken all together. So the first one is your clinical risk assessment. So before we go on to the topic per se, you should be aware of certain terminologies. Okay. So the terminologies are as such. So first, what is risk? Risk is nothing but the probability that an individual will develop a specific disease in a given period of time. So there will be certain factors or entities which will determine whether this particular individual, when he faces these risk factors, will develop a disease even in a given period of time. Got it? Now, these risk factors are nothing but certain entities or elements which will increase the likelihood of an individual to develop the disease. So risk and susceptibility, they are more or less the same. So an individual has a higher susceptibility of developing a disease or a higher risk for developing a disease. Both means the same. Now there is another terminology called as risk determinant. A risk factor which can be modified or which cannot be modified is called as risk determinant or background characteristic. For example, the age of the individual, the gender of the individual, the amount of stress he is going through, all these factors cannot be modified. So that's why those risk factors which cannot be modified, they are called as risk determinants or background characteristic. Risk indicators, they're nothing but probable factors which were identified to be associated to be the cause of disease, but they are not yet confirmed. So for the confirmation, you have to carry out various other studies which will be done by the research department. So they are called as risk indicators. Then fourth comes your risk predictors or markers, which means that they are associated with the increase for risk of disease, but they do not cause the disease. For example, bleeding on probing, they will just indicate that this particular disease is present, but they are not the causative agent of the disease. For example, an individual has bleeding on probing if he or she has any gingival disease or any periodontal disease, but bleeding on probing is not the cause of periodontal disease. Got it? It is just an indicator or a predictor or a marker. This will just be associated with the increased risk of the disease, but it is not the cause of the disease. So in this chapter, we are basically dealing with what are the factors which can put an individual at a risk of developing a disease. They are not the sole etiological factors. For example, diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus is of two types, type 1, type 2. Type 1 is caused because of, can anybody answer this question?
Autoimmune.
It has an autoimmune basis. So what happens?
Affecting the beta Langerhans.
Yeah, good.
Beta
So the
6.
pancreatic cells, the beta islet of Langerhans cells of the pancreas, they are affected. Okay. So that is type 1. So that is the etiology of the disease. Now, the type 2 is associated with various risk factors. That is, there will be multiple factors which will put an individual to develop diabetes mellitus. For example, in type 2 diabetes mellitus, what will happen? There is increased what? Peripheral insulin resistance. You have something called as an insulin,
Yes,
which
ma'am.
will help in transportation of glucose into the cells through its insulin receptors. Now, there are certain conditions which will increase the peripheral insulin resistance, which will cause impediment in this transport of glucose into the cell. That's why there is increased levels of glucose in the systemic circulation. So there are various risk factors to it. Okay. The same way your periodontal disease or your gingival disease is caused by various, it has specific etiological agents, but there are certain factors which will put an individual at a higher risk of developing it. That is, it will be very easy for them to get this gingival or periodontal disease. So they have categorized all these risk factors, risk determinants, indicators in this manner. So risk factors, for example, a person who chews tobacco, or a person who is diabetic, person who has an increased count of these pathogenic bacteria in the tooth, microbial tooth deposits in the form of plaque, calculus, will be at a higher risk of developing the gingival or periodontal disease. Then coming on to the second part, that is your risk determinant and your background characteristics. Now, as I had told, certain risk factors which cannot be modified are your risk determinants. So this includes your genetic factors, your age, your gender, your socioeconomic status, the stress. So all these factors cannot be modified. Okay, non-modifiable risk factors. These are called as risk determinants. Now coming on to risk indicators, that is the factors which are found in association with the disease, but they have not been confirmed that they are the risk factors for the disease. Okay, so this includes your HIV, osteoporosis, your infrequent dental visits. They are identified as risk indicators. So this, you can just take a picture of this particular slide because it's very important. Then the fourth one is your risk markers or predictors. That is, an individual these particular entities are not associated as the etiological aspect of the disease, but they are associated with the course of the disease. For example, a person will have gingivitis and periodontitis, they will have bleeding on probing. It is just a clinical indicator that that there is some active disease activity going on in that person's oral cavity. But bleeding on probing will not say, it's not the causative agent of that particular disease. Got it? So these there are very thin lines in between these terminologies, but I'm just telling you what are the differentiating parts. How will you differentiate one terminology from the another, and how you group them under these categories? Okay, so this tabular column is very important, and each entity will be dealt in detail in future chapters. Okay, so here you are supposed to understand that, for example, in risk factor, how tobacco smoking can cause periodontal disease. Has this chapter been covered? Has this chapter?
Yes, ma'am.
It has been covered. Now, what are the various chemicals or cytokines which are present in your GCF when a person smokes? There is presence higher elevation of your interleukins, your prostaglandin E2. There are higher elevation of your collagenase enzymes, your neutrophils. So all these count will increase in your gingival crevicular fluid, as a result of which there will be increased periodontal destruction. Now, one of the most important feature of tobacco smoking is what? A person who smokes will not have bleeding on probing.
Bleeding.
Hai na? So that is another
Yes,
feature.
ma'am.
Why? Because there is what?
Constriction of the
Constriction.
vessel.
Elevated vasoconstriction will be there, because of which there will not be any bleeding on probing. But all these cytokines like your prostaglandin, interleukins, and your collagenolases enzymes, they are elevated in the GCF of your periodontium. Okay, gingival crevicular fluid, which causes increased periodontal destruction. So in that way, second is your diabetes. What happens in a patient who is diabetic? patient who is diabetic, there will be increased glucose level in the systemic circulation. And also you will have certain alteration in your pathogenic microbiota, which is colonizing the subgingival area. And third will be your increase in the level of collagenase enzymes, and because of which there is alteration in the function of collagenase enzyme, the old collagen fibers will not be degraded easily. As a result, you will have immature collagen fibers or quite old collagen fibers in the periodontium, which do not serve any purpose or which do not maintain the integrity of the periodontal attachment apparatus. As a result, it is highly prone to destruction. Got it? And also patients who are diabetic, they are also immunocompromised. Why? Because there is altered neutrophil function. There is alteration in the neutrophil function. So because of this altered neutrophil function, altered macrophage function, they are not able to perform their regular activities. That is, neutrophils are your first line of defense. First cell line of defense in your blood circulation. The second one, macrophage, it helps in phagocytosis of the foreign pathogens or antigens. Now, if their function is altered, whatever pathogens are present in your subgingival microbiota, they can easily release certain toxins and cause destruction of your periodontium. The third one is your pathogenic bacteria. So in patients who have got higher levels of Phyromonas gingivalis or Treponema denticola or Aggregatibacter actinomycetum comitans, they will have higher periodontal destruction. The last one is your microbial tooth deposits. That is, patients who do not maintain their oral hygiene properly, plaque, calculus, more amount of local factors, more amount of periodontal destruction by virtue of the toxins produced by those pathogens. Now coming on to risk determinants. So there are certain, now for example, aggressive periodontitis, it has genetic basis. That is, this disease runs in families. Now if in a patient's family, they have, so there is something called as interleukin phenotype. So there are genes which are coding for this interleukin, 1 alpha and 1 beta. If there are any alterations with the same, you will have marked destruction of your periodontium. So in this manner, every entity has its own explanation. Okay, only thing you're supposed to remember is what comes under what. What is modifiable, what is non-modifiable, what is an indicator. Indicator means it is associated with the disease, but they are not confirmed. Markers or predictors means they are not the cause, but they are associated with the disease. Now coming on to the how do you go about clinical risk assessment for periodontal disease? How do you go about assessing? That is, a patient has come to you, how will you go about assessing it? So first, there are two components of it. First, you will assess based on the demographic data. Second is based on the medical history. Under demographic data, you have got the age, duration of exposure, post-menopausal women, evidence of aggressive periodontitis, male gender, preventive practices, frequency of care, socioeconomic status. So all these entities you have to ask in demographic data to confirm whether this person is at a higher risk of developing or not. So, then comes your medical history. Under medical history, you have all these entities. You have to check for diabetes, smoking, whether they're seropositive for HIV antigen or not, osteoporosis. So all these entities have to be taken care of or to be asked in detail to arrive at the measurement of the clinical risk that an individual has. So in a clinical setup, how do you incorporate this data? So when a patient comes to the clinic, you will evaluate the medical history, the dental history, and the periodontal examination. From medical history, you will be able to find out whether they are diabetic, whether they are taking any medicines or anything. From dental history, you will be able to get to know whether they have any existing periodontal disease, or it's for the first time they have got it, or else this particular disease has any familial aggregation. That is, it runs in the families. So you'll be able to find out whether it is aggressive or not. Periodontal examination, you will determine what are the local factors, what is the status of the gingiva, what is the status of the periodontium, and accordingly you will determine what are the risk factors. Okay, you have identified, for example, diabetes mellitus is one of the risk factor I have identified in this particular patient XYZ. So under risk factor, risk determinant identification, you have to scrutinize all the first three things: medical, dental history, and periodontal examination. For example, if a person smokes tobacco, you have to put them on cessation strategies. That is, you have to advise them, ask, assist, advise to cessate that particular habit. If a person is diabetic and you, through blood investigations, you have found out that their blood sugar levels are quite on a higher end, that is more than 180 milligram per deciliter. So what you will do, you are not in the authority to prescribe any oral hypoglycemic agents, but you will very well give a referral to the general physician to bring the glycemic status of the individual on normal standards. ठीक है. And also you will take the plaque or the local factors for antibiotic susceptibility testing. In case if you want to prescribe any antibiotic, you have to do culture and sensitivity. These things are very important in case of aggressive periodontitis, refractory periodontitis. Okay. Then genetic factors. So there is something called as DNA fingerprinting, or else identification of a particular gene which is altered, which is responsible for the expression of this disease, periodontal disease. Okay, so in that way you have to scrutinize each and every element of your case history taking, identify the risk factors, then you have to try to alleviate them. And then you go ahead with your phase 1 therapy, which includes your non-surgical therapy, phase 2 therapy, phase 2, phase 3 therapy, which includes your surgical and restorative therapy. Now, in case if you get a positive response, then you put the patient under maintenance phase. Now, in case whatever factors, whatever disease process is going on, if it is not arrested, then you have to again go back to again to risk factor assessment and determination. Okay. You have to identify if you have a negative response. If you have a positive response, just put under periodontal maintenance. If they get a negative response, then you again go on assessing all these risk factors, whether this person, what are the probable risk factors. Okay. Now coming on to the next part. So now we had identified. So where does it come in case history? After you have done your examination, medical, dental history, you are identifying the risk factors at every stage of your case history. Now coming on to determining the prognosis of your particular disease entity or your treatment plan. So where does it fit in this particular thing? So before going on to the topic per se, what is prognosis? Prognosis, the word prognosis, it has an indication towards the future. Now you know this is the clinical situation of the patient. He has got this medical history, dental history. On examination, we have found this. We have arrived at a probable diagnosis. On some provisional diagnosis, we have arrived. Now, based on this, if I do the treatment, is it going to be a successful thing or not? Will it succeed or not? So in this, you will determine, this particular aspect is called as your prognosis. So the definition says it is a prediction of the probable course, duration, and outcome of a disease based on the general knowledge of pathogenesis of the disease and presence of risk factors of the disease. Okay, so you are just anticipating that, okay, if I do this particular treatment for this patient, based on its clinical appearance and diagnosis, is it going to be a successful entity or not? Okay, that is called your prognosis. For example, a patient who has suffered, a patient has got chronic kidney disease and a patient has got acute kidney disease. So which will have a better prognosis?
Chronic.
Chronic. Why?
Chronic.
Why?
And the acute is also there.
See, if a patient has got chronic kidney disease, so basically the disease process is quite slow. Okay, the amount of kidneys which are damaged, it has occurred because all these years this particular damaging aspect was present. Got it? Now in acute kidney failure, what happens? All of a sudden there was sharp rise in certain entities or chemicals in your blood, in your systemic circulation, which has definitely caused some damage to the nephrons, and it has to be removed. Okay. So patient who has got chronic kidney disease will have a better prognosis, because once I stop those etiological agents which were running through this duration of time, and I try to treat the kidney, there are chances that it might revert back to the previous state. But in case of acute kidney damage, all this thing happened in a very short span of time, and the damage which has occurred is massive. I cannot do anything about it. So it's going to have a bad prognosis. The same way you determine the prognosis for your periodontal or gingival diseases. Okay. Now there are two, you might get confused with the terminologies, diagnosis and prognosis. Diagnosis is nothing but you're detecting the nature or cause of a medical condition. You're arriving at what is the cause of this particular presentation. Prognosis means how will it go in the future after you treat it. Okay. Now this prognosis, in which part of your case history will it fit? After you have come at a diagnosis and before you do the treatment plan. Okay, because after you start treating, the patient would have started paying for the treatment, and you say ki, oh God, I cannot save this particular teeth or tooth, or I cannot improve the status or the condition of the patient, then there is no way you cannot revert back all these situations. So that's why this prognosis is placed after you arrive at the diagnosis and before you make the treatment plan. In case if you want to extract the teeth, if in case there are certain clinical conditions in which you'll have multiple mobile teeth and you determine what is the mobility of the teeth, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. Now this gradation is done so that you can have a you can devise treatment plan in such a way that grade 1 and grade 2 mobile teeth can be saved, and grade 3 mobility teeth have to be extracted at the initial phases because they will not have a good prognosis in future. Okay, it will not yield you any good results. So that's why prognosis is always fit before treatment plan and after diagnosis. Okay. Now these are, again, these terminologies are quite confusing. So this slide has been kept in order to differentiate what is risk. Risk is nothing but an individual will develop a disease. The probability whether he or she will develop. Factors are the one which will put an individual at a higher risk. Prognosis, prediction of the course and outcome. Prognostic factors are similar to risk factors which will determine as to whether this person is going to have a good prognosis or not. At times, your prognostic factors will overlap with your risk factors. For example, when I'm determining the prognosis of the patient's clinical condition, I will see, okay, the patient is diabetic. The risk factor for this disease is again diabetes mellitus, but prognostic factor is again diabetes mellitus. Now, if we take into account that this patient glycemic status is brought to the normal conditions, his prognosis is gonna improve. Okay. Now types of prognosis. Now based upon various gradations, they have put it under these prognosis levels: good, fair, poor, questionable, and hopeless. So under good prognosis means that all your etiological factors and your clinical radiographic periodontal support is sufficient enough for the clinician to maintain as well as for the patient to maintain. So that time you will write good prognosis. Fair prognosis means 25% of attachment loss has occurred and there is class 1 furcation involvement. Poor prognosis means there is 50% of attachment loss and there are class 2 furcations. Questionable prognosis means there is more than 50% of attachment loss and class 2, class 3 furcation involvement, class 2 mobility is present. All these parameters you have to learn. So this prognosis is based upon the attachment loss, the furcation involvement, the mobility of the teeth. Okay, so all these parameters have to be assessed. Then only you will determine whether this particular tooth has to be saved or it has to be extracted. Got it? And in hopeless, there will be severe attachment loss and definitely you'll have to advise for extraction. Now, another way of writing the prognosis as favorable, questionable, unfavorable, or hopeless. So under favorable, prognosis means it can be stabilized with comprehensive periodontal treatment and can be maintained well by the clinician as well as by the patient. Now, questionable prognosis, you will have an indulgence of your local and systemic factors as well. So, you will have systemic factors. For example, patient has any underlying cardiac disease or any systemic disease or any lifestyle disorder, but they are there but can be maintained by the physician. Okay. Unfavorable means the disease condition is influenced by both local and systematic factors, but systemic factors which cannot be controlled. Okay. And hopeless prognosis means the teeth for whichever you are determining. One second. The prognosis, it has to be extracted. Got it? These are the two ways, either good, fair, poor, questionable, or hopeless. So you can just remember good means everything is under control. Fair means 25% attachment loss, class 1 furcation. Poor means 50% attachment loss, class 2 furcation. Questionable means more than 50% attachment loss, class 2, class 3 furcation, or class 2 mobility. Hopeless means severe attachment loss. Okay. Then favorable, questionable, unfavorable, hopeless. Favorable means it can be stabilized with comprehensive periodontal treatment and maintenance. Questionable means there will be influence of local and systemic factors but can be maintained. Unfavorable means the condition is influenced by local and systemic factors, cannot be controlled. Hopeless means it has to be extracted. Okay. Now, before coming on to determining the prognosis, we first determine the prognosis of the entire dentition. Then we go on to the individual tooth prognosis. For example, okay. So in overall determination of the prognosis, we have these entities. What is the patient's age? What is the disease severity? Is the patient maintaining the oral cavity properly or not? What is the amount of plaque control present over there? Okay, so these are the entities. In case if an individual is quite old, very old, above 60 plus, and you have got grade 2 mobile teeth, you have got severe recession, you have got attrition, and so many other things are there. So you will do a treatment in such a way which is feasible at his age. Okay, you're not going to do too much of extensive or invasive procedures on them. Okay, you're just going to get, in case if it is a grade 2 mobile tooth and there is more than 50% of attachment loss, you will, considering his or her age, you will better advise extraction. Okay, and refer them to prosto for rehabilitation of that particular tooth. Now, same scenario, if it persists in a young individual, you will try to save the tooth. Okay, because he has more life, of course, and he will be able to bear, because the number of appointments he has to come, he'll be able to bear with that. Okay. And also the healing capacity is much more. The immune status of an young individual is quite more responsive to your treatment procedures than in the older subject. Okay, so these are the various factors which you have to consider when you're determining the prognosis. So first comes your overall clinical factors, which will help in your determining the overall prognosis. So patient age, disease severity, plaque control, patient compliance. Second is your systemic or environmental factors. Third is your anatomic factors. Fourth is your prosthetic and restorative factors, and last is your local factors. So I'll be discussing each and every component of all these factors in detail in this slide. So overall clinical factors. So first comes your patient age. Okay, now you are given two individuals. So one is an old individual and another one is your young individual. Both have same amount of bone destruction, same amount of bleeding on probing, or same amount of clinical attachment loss. So which patient is going to have a better prognosis? A younger individual
Old
or
patient.
old patient? How old patient will have a better prognosis? See, there is a logic behind it. The younger individual had, both of them have same amount of clinical attachment loss. But the time for that amount of clinical attachment loss to occur in this old individual, it took nearly 30 years. Okay. And this individual is 35 years old. So for him, it has, this amount of damage has occurred in very lesser amount of time. But for this patient, it has occurred over a longer period. It took these many years for him. But for him, only 2 years or 3 years it took to produce this amount of damage. So which means that the severity of the disease of this individual is higher as and when compared to this individual. So the prognosis of your patient, older patient, will be better as compared to the younger individual. Okay, then coming on to disease severity. So there are various entities to determine the disease severity. First one is your pocket depth. In an individual who has got deeper pockets, but less clinical attachment loss. So level of the clinical attachment loss is less, but pockets are very deep. Periodontal pockets are deep. So that patient will have better prognosis than a patient who has got shallow pockets, but large amount of clinical attachment loss. That is, he will have recession along with shallow pockets. But this side, the patient has no recession, but deeper pockets. So this patient will have better prognosis. Deeper pockets with less clinical attachment loss. Shallow pockets with more amount of clinical attachment loss. The level of attachment, again, the same thing. Lesser the level of attachment, better will be the prognosis. Then degree of bone loss. So in between, when you compare horizontal bone loss and vertical bone loss. So in horizontal bone loss and vertical bone loss, which has better prognosis? A vertical bone loss.
Horizontal.
No. See, horizontal will have what? Horizontal bone loss. It is at right angle to your tooth surface. What will happen? You are not able to you cannot regenerate this much of bone. But in vertical bone loss, it is present at an angle. You have more number of bony walls. So determining, it depends on whether how many bone walls are present. If there are 3 bony walls which are present, and you have a vertical bone loss over here. Okay, so you can put the graft in there, and the blood vessels from these walls can grow into this graft. So you will have better prognosis in your vertical bone loss or angular bone loss as and when compared to horizontal bone loss. The type of bony defect, of course, more the number of bone walls, more will be the prognosis, better will be the prognosis. And now second comes to the plaque control. So plaque control of an individual, of course, it is dependent on the clinician as well as on the patient. So it has to go hand in hand. In plaque control, you have to advise the patient to make use of toothbrushes and mouthwashes, and you have to call the patient on recall. You have to recall them, keep them on maintenance phase, and you have to assess whether how they are doing on phase. On day 1, you will do the treatment for the patient. So you have removed all the local factors, but in the future visits, you have to, on that day itself, you have to give oral hygiene instructions, educate the patient in such a way that he or she is educated as well as motivated regarding oral hygiene maintenance. Second comes your patient compliance and patient cooperation. That is, after you have done the treatment, you give proper instructions so that they are motivated, educated, and in the recall visits, you will see as to how compliance and how cooperating they are. In case of a patient, if you feel they are not compliant or cooperative enough, you have all rights to refuse to treat them or and to advise extraction for a given tooth. If you feel ki this patient is not going to maintain his or oral hygiene and you want to do some regenerative procedure, and if you feel it's not going to be of any use, not going to serve any purpose, so you have to get the tooth extracted. Okay. Now, second comes your systemic and environmental factors. So as in risk factors, I had already told you how smoking plays an important role, how systemic conditions or diseases, for example, your diabetes, mellitus. Then comes your genetic factors, that is any gene alterations in your interleukin-1 alpha beta genotype will definitely cause more periodontal breakdown. And stress is associated with increased level of your catecholamines in your systemic circulation, okay, your adrenaline and all. So in response to these systemic epinephrine, there will be production of various cytokines and various neurotrophic factors which will be elevated in your gingival crevicular fluid and cause periodontal destruction. Now, stress can be induced because of various personal issues, various professional issues. So main thing is that you will have elevated levels of adrenaline, which will cause release of certain chemicals and neurotrophic factors in your. Hello, can you hear me?